think I know now that I can really just let go and hang out in a shape for a long time. I'm not going to get injured, and it's actually going to feel amazing, you know?
Wow. Wow. What a gift that pathway has been for the way you relate to your world. And
it's so great.
yeah, especially that last thing that you just said, because it sounded like if I color out of the lines in any way here, I'm in danger.
Yes. Yes.
And this practice of coming up to the moment of surrender and trusting my friend that said, babe, use the props.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. Lean into some support. You don't have to do it all on your own. And a teacher that can hold the space, and you go, all right, I'm going to let go here. I'm going to let go here. Oh, this is nice. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Oh, how does this, and probably consciously / unconsciously, that then became a way of feeling into different things in your life. That's amazing.
Yeah. So great. How great's yoga? It's just
great.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the best friend that never leaves your side, you know? It's just the best. So amazing.
Yeah. I haven't taught a flow class for a number of years now, and it's definitely bubbling around in there how I might reapproach teaching flow. And I know that you've taught a lot of flow, and that's been more your mainstay than Yin Yoga. Correct me if that's wrong. To me, if I was to step back into that space, it would definitely be teaching flow in a Yin way, which means bringing the idea of target areas to flow yoga, where instead of it being alignment based, it would be intention based. And for like an example of that I might give is that if people were coming into a back bend, for example, and the structural shape of their back bend meant that they always get a really painful pinch in their lumbar spine when they come into full wheel, that they could just do a different back bend. That it's not about the posture itself being this transformational thing that only exists in that posture, because in every single back bend, the spine's going to do almost identical to what it will do in another back bend, depending on how much force you put through it. And you teach flow, and you're acutely aware of things like the pointed feet that we talked about before. I'm wondering how your revelations in Yin Yoga affect the way that you teach flow.
So what you said just now is how I teach flow. So I do exactly the same. It's the same with all of the things that I teach. So I know that everybody's body is different, and I might offer full wheel, but you could also do supported bridge or bridge, and it would be exactly the same target area, as you call it, because I like thematics for me is everything. I'm teaching every single class that I teach, flow, yin, workshops, kirtan, everything has an intention behind it. So like, okay, so if, for instance, I'm teaching a whole class on Ganesha, and it would be, you know, all about connecting to the earth and the space beneath you. And so then you'd think, okay, that's legs. Okay, so if, for instance, I was teaching a yin class, it might not be a meridian class if I was teaching a Ganesha class, for instance, but I might teach the earth element. And then in that, there'd be a lot of, you know, legs, and maybe I'd do like a hip mandala or something, but then feet. But so, okay, so let's talk about if I was going to teach Paschimottanasana or caterpillar, right? So it's like the same shape. And everybody's in class, and I'm teaching caterpillar, and then I get everyone into caterpillar with their bolster and everything and props and everything, whatever they want. And I give them like 6 different options of props and whatever they want to take and whatever they don't. If I'm teaching that same shape in a vinyasa class or flow class, I would offer up props. I would say also, now I often say, if you'd like to make this a more yin-like shape, you're welcome to soften it and have a round spine and soft back and soft shoulders and arms. Look, to be honest, I feel like maybe a quarter of the class might do that. So there's a whole heap of people who still like that dynamic sensation in their body, and they're welcome to it. But again, we're still connecting to the same essence and energy. So because energy, although again, I said before that the body and movement was my way in. That's not, after teaching yoga and teaching dance, because I taught dance for a long time, from teaching dance, which is really quite, trying to get everybody to look as similar as they possibly can, and trying to get everybody have the same expression on their face kind of as they can as well at the same time. Whereas now we're coming from a place inside more so, coming from an intention of, okay, my intention is that everyone feels a sense of safety because it's a Ganesha class. Everybody feels like they're protected. If I was to say, you all have to look exactly the same and you have to do this shape, I don't think that I would be fulfilling my intention if I was to do that, So it doesn't really matter now. I don't really mind if you do Paschimottanasana or Caterpillar. It won't affect your practice. In fact, it'll be better for your practice if you choose Caterpillar, if that's what you need in your body, right?
Mm. Yeah, and the conundrum is that absolute unison in a group of people moving is impossible anyway, because the foundations of the bodies are different.
Here we come back again to the bone structures, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how can everybody have the same amount of external rotation when our hips are all different? We just can't. There's just no way. And then like going back to when I was a kid, we'd all be on the floor and we'd be in second position and dragonfly, and the teacher would go around and push us down and open our legs out, trying to get us all flat in a pancake. And I just couldn't. So I wasn't as good as everyone else because I just couldn't, because my bones wouldn't do that. So I always had this thought in my mind that I was just never good enough, and it's still there. Like, this is one of my limiting beliefs, just from when I was a kid as a dancer, not having hips that just didn't have the right joint that looked the same as my best friend Kylie, you know what I mean? So, So crazy, isn't it? Just so crazy.
It is so crazy. And there are two things I want to kind of add to that. One is I have the exact same belief that came from the exact same experiences. And two, the dance teachers that we had didn't know this about bones.
No.
Nobody illuminated this for me until I went to India and studied a teacher training there. And for the anatomy module, they just put on Paul Grilley's DVD. And at the time I thought, gosh, that's lazy. But I look back and think, that was genius.
Yeah.
I didn't get it at the time. I wrote all these notes. I didn't get it at the time. That material came back to me a handful more times before I really clicked and went, oh, I see what he's trying to do here. And that material is brilliant because he's got people from very opposite ends of the spectrum showing you the difference.
Yeah.
And I was studying at a university where we were looking at cadavers and in-depth anatomy, and nothing about the anatomy included variation. It was just the names of things and the pathways of things. And then where, a vein runs here, these joints do this, these are their planes of motion, but nothing in there was about skeletal variation. And I've said that a lot to students. I've said, if you go and watch Paul Grilley's anatomy material, you'll be learning much better content than you would if you went and studied anatomy at a university level, straight up.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's really life-changing. And especially as teachers, when you're looking at 30 or 20 or even 10 people, and they all look completely different. And if you're not aware that they all have different bodies or different shaped bones, then to try and get them all into the same shape is just for the detriment of everybody, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Wild. And it's so simple. Yeah. It's so simple.
It's simple, and it's completely earth-shattering at the same time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, and I'd love for you to share what you're exploring now, because it sounds like for you, it's definitely been the body is the entry, and now it's all this internal landscape, which is such a beautiful progression. And I know that in your yin offerings and in your yin teachings and the classes that you do are just, things that you did in classes that I joined were just extraordinary in terms of the way you would frame a class, or the pathway that you might invite us to explore during a posture. I'd love for you to share with us what this deepening is that you're exploring now within.
So that's what's really exciting for me, because I didn't know how to do it, and no one ever taught me how to do it, and it was like something that I had to just figure out for myself, I guess. And I'm not saying that no one else does it, but I didn't, like, I'd done I don't know, hundreds of yin classes with teachers who are really great, but no one had ever taught me what to say when people were in their shape. And whenever I did a yin class, I'd just get a lot of information about a meridian line or anatomy, really, or alignment. Okay, so or what the target area was or something like that, which is great. But I started getting more interested in what would it be like if I was to connect a pranic energy, like a breathing into a particular meridian line. So what would that feel like? So I started practicing that, and then I started teaching it and watching how it changed the energy of the experience of the people who are in my classes and how they felt with it. So it was almost like I would, depending on if it was a yin or a yang shape or a yin or a yang meridian line, to direct the breath up or direct the breath down. So it was like an Apanavayu or a Pranavayu, but with a meridian. So I was starting to connect all of the things that I'd learned in my Tantra trainings and my Vinyasa, sorry, that's my dog, my Vinyasa trainings to the yin shapes. So because we're there for so long, like we're in shapes for sometimes 5 minutes, it gives you a really amazing opportunity to stay with the breath or with a practice, like a meditation practice or a directional practice of prana for a while, so that you can really connect to a practice that is deeper whilst you're also in a shape that is connecting to a meridian. So then there's an intention of, lungs, say liver, which is like a detox practice, and then you can bring the energy up the outer seam of the leg at the same time as you're connecting to the outer seam of the leg, like maybe if you're in sleeping swan or something for a while. So then I started doing that, and then we can add things like color or mantra or sound or I don't know, heaps of other different layers on top of that. Or maybe there's a layer of an element on top of that. We can layer water onto it, or a shape of the breath. You can count, and with the counts you can then lay a mantra into the counts instead of a 1 2 3 4, an om 4 times or something like that. So then it even gets deeper and deeper again. And then when and how to layer that, then I had to explore that. So then, okay, so how can I connect the heart meridian to a heart-based mantra and a practice of breath that opens up the heart space as well, and then connect that maybe with the heart chakra. So everything just gets more and more layered. So every time you're in a shape, there's a practice. So it's not just about, okay, your heart meridian line starts at the heart and then it goes up into the tip of the tongue or whatever like that, but it's literally like, okay, so how about you push the tip of your tongue to the top layer of the gums and you like move your tongue across the gums. So it's not me telling you this is where your tongue ends, but it's you are having a sensation and experience of the tongue line in your own body without me even needing to tell you that that's where your tongue meridian is. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a different, it's like, I don't know, I feel like that's a gateway in that was, I don't know, it kind of just organically happened because that's with all of this. So I did my my yin training with Sarah Powers, and she speaks to the meridians a lot, but she's beautiful, and she knows, she's given us all of these texts and things to read and beautiful pathways, but I just couldn't match them up with the way that I was teaching and the way that yin yoga was for me. So although she's such a huge inspiration and I adore her and love her, and when I think about her, I even now just think about her and I feel held because she's so amazing. I still had to find my own way in, and of course, you have to anyway, because otherwise it's kind of not authentic to who you are. But I did that over, I guess, a space of maybe 5 years it took for me to really figure it out. Yeah.
Wow. And that speaks to me of the difference between just giving information as a teacher and reeling off information that someone has read or learnt about the pathway of a meridian, and actually giving the students in the class the invitation to embody that information. Yeah. However it's received, because in those spaces and in Yin Yoga classes, the brainwaves change, and you can really drop down from a cognitive place to a dreamy place and a imaginatory place, and a scope of an idea, like feeling into the tongue or the eyes, or having you and your extraordinary voice chant in the room and let the chant flow through a meridian or something, because I know you do extraordinary work like that. It's also got the room for interpretation, and I think that that's really important, because sometimes people try and give a very strong practice to be done, and it can feel rigid.
Yes. Yeah, it's an invitation, and it's totally unnecessary. And if you don't want to do any of it, and all you want to do is go to Shavasana for the whole 60 minutes, you're welcome. But then also I realized too that it's kind of a lot of these practices that I'm sharing and inviting people into can feel quite weird, I guess. They're weird because it's certainly not Western world culture practices. They're definitely Eastern practices, and particularly with the layering of mantra and the chanting that I do, which is certainly not pop music. And it's a completely different energy. But that is also weird. And I feel like, maybe it's either you love it or you hate it, but you definitely don't have to do it either. And I also, like you said before, everybody's going to have their own experience of yoga. Everybody's going to have their own experience in the shape, in the practice. They're going to feel different. Everyone's sleeping swan experience will feel different, and I think one of the greatest things that Sarah Powers taught me, and it took me a very long time to actually understand it and feel it and be it, is to be comfortable in other people's discomfort. And I think that's what the pressure was for me, because I was so uncomfortable watching people, like, with different bodies to me, in a shape that I could tell they were really uncomfortable in, like saddle pose or even sleeping swan and stuff. And I'd be sitting there, I wasn't even doing the shape, and I'd be sweating. I'd be watching them sweating because I could see that they were just so uncomfortable in it. But I think then when I started to invite them to go deeper in and to surrender into their shape, which is what helped me to love Yin Yoga, to offer them a pathway inward, so that it wasn't all about their physical experience. They could go inward and have maybe a pranic experience, or a vibrational experience, or an inner vision, so that they could get out of their head and more into what was happening in an experience for them that wasn't so painful or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Then
Wonderful.
Selfishly, I think that's probably what started to make me, or to help me to create this kind of method, was because I was selfishly uncomfortable watching everyone be uncomfortable. And that was what Sarah's teaching was. It was like, there are people that are going to be really uncomfortable in some shapes, and in the same shape there'll be someone sitting next to them that will be in pure bliss.
Yeah.
For instance, I love saddle pose. I am in bliss in that shape. I love it so much. Give it to me every day. But I know that there are people who absolutely probably pray. They walk in and pray, please don't give me saddle pose in this class today. And they're in it. And I don't know, I feel like if I'm in a shape that's uncomfortable for me, I know that if I'm breathing and if I'm following something else, it takes me out of my head and out of the discomfort into something internal that's more peaceful and harmonious, you know?
Mm-hmm.